While out with her friends, she laughed. He's too scared to ever leave me. He'd fall apart without me. They all nodded. I just stayed quiet. The next week, I accepted a job offer in another city, packed my things, and left without a word. Weeks later, when she finally came back, ready to beg, I, 29M, am a supply chain analyst for a mid-sized logistics firm. I own a 3-bedroom townhouse in a quiet suburb, drive a reliable car, and mostly just keep to myself. For 2 years, I share my home with my ex. She moved in about 6 months after we started dating. We had a pretty straightforward arrangement. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, and the property taxes. She was supposed to be saving her income from her retail job to launch an online consulting business. It was a Friday evening. We were at a crowded downtown bar celebrating her friend's birthday. The music was incredibly loud, and the place was packed. I excused myself to get the next round of drinks from the bar. It took about 15 minutes to get the bartender's attention, pay, and carefully balance the tray of cocktails back toward our booth. I approached from the blind side of the high-back leather booth. That was when I heard her voice. It cut cleanly through the noise of the bar. He's too scared to ever leave me. He'd fall apart without me. I stopped right where I was, completely hidden by a thick wooden pillar. Her friend laughed. Are you sure? He seems pretty independent. He owns a house. That doesn't matter, my ex replied. Her tone was so dismissive and arrogant, it barely sounded like the woman I lived with. He's emotionally dependent. I could do whatever I want, and he'd just take it. Besides, I need him for another 6 months. His credit is financing the LLC. Once the business account hits the target balance, and I sign the lease on the new apartment with boyfriend, I'm dropping him. He's just a stepping stone. The whole booth erupted in quiet, conspiratorial giggles. They all nodded. Her best friend knew. Her other friends knew. I just stayed quiet. I looked down at the tray of drinks in my hands. The condensation dripped onto my shoes. I didn't drop the tray. I didn't storm over and scream. I simply turned around, walked over to a nearby empty table, set the tray down, and walked out the front door of the bar. I sent a single text to her, not feeling well. Walked to the train station. See you at home. The train ride home was completely silent. I didn't feel devastated. I felt cold. I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. She had mentioned my credit. She had mentioned financing an LLC. She had mentioned a boyfriend. I got home, went straight to my home office, and locked the door. I logged into my primary bank account. Everything looked normal there. Then, I logged into a credit monitoring service. I had not checked it in about 4 months because I wasn't planning on taking out any new loans. My credit score had plummeted by 90 points. There were 3 new credit card accounts open in my name over the last 90 days. The balances were staggering. Card 1 was for $18,000. Card 2 was for $15,000. Card 3 was for $12,000. All of them were nearly maxed out, bringing the total to exactly $45,000. I clicked on the details. The mailing address for all 3 cards was a P.O. box across town. The authorized user on all 3 cards was my ex. I spent the next 3 hours combing through the digital footprint of my own life. I found the LLC registration online. It was registered under my ex's name and the name of a man I had never met, the boyfriend. The business address was a commercial space downtown. She came home around 2 in the morning. I heard her stumble up the stairs, open the bedroom door, and collapse into bed. I stayed in the office. I didn't sleep a single wink. I spent the rest of the night printing documents, taking screenshots, and building a timeline. I also realized her iCloud account was still logged into my desktop Mac. Her iMessages were syncing right to my screen. I backed up her entire message history with this boyfriend to an external hard drive. Monday morning at 8 o'clock sharp, I was sitting in the office of my lawyer. I handed him the printed credit reports, the LLC registration, the text message backups, and a timeline of the events. My lawyer reviewed the documents in silence. He looked up, his expression entirely neutral. This is identity theft and fraud. Because the amount exceeds state felony thresholds and involved the use of postal services and interstate banking wires to open the accounts, it touches on federal wire and mail fraud. What is your goal here? I want her out of my house. I want my name cleared of this debt. I want her to face the absolute maximum legal consequences for this, I said. He nodded slowly. Here is the legal reality. She is technically a month-to-month tenant, even without a written lease, because she has established residency. You cannot just change the locks while she is living there. That is an illegal eviction. However, if she voluntarily abandons the property, or if you establish a new, legally binding lease with a third party, and she is entirely absent, it complicates her ability to claim immediate residency rights. But the fraud is the primary weapon here. He gave me a strict set of instructions. First, file an identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission. Second, file a police report with the local precinct detailing the exact amounts and the suspected forgery. Third, contact the fraud departments of all 3 credit card companies. Provide the police report and initiate fraud investigations to freeze the accounts and remove my liability. Do not confront her, my lawyer warned me. Let the investigations begin quietly. If she knows you know, she might destroy evidence or attempt to flee with the drained funds. I went straight to work. I asked for an emergency meeting with my department director. I knew our company had a regional hub in Denver. I explained that I was dealing with a severe, immediate personal security issue involving identity theft and requested an emergency transfer to the Denver office. Given my performance record, HR and the director approved it within 48 hours. They gave me a relocation bonus and a start date for the following Monday. I went back home. She was sitting on the couch, watching television. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I'm going to a trade show in Miami next week, she said casually. Leaving Thursday, coming back Tuesday. I need you to cover the mortgage entirely this month. I have business expenses. Okay, I said. She looked at me, a brief flash of annoyance crossing her face. That's it? Just okay? Just okay. Thursday morning, she packed 2 large suitcases and took a car service to the airport. I already knew from reading her synced text messages that there was no trade show. She was flying to Miami with her boyfriend for a vacation, funded entirely by my stolen credit. The moment her flight took off, I went into absolute overdrive. I contacted a property management firm I had researched the night before. I handed over management of the townhouse entirely. I signed a comprehensive property management agreement. I told them I was relocating immediately and needed the property leased as fast as possible. Because the townhouse was in a highly desirable school district and in pristine condition, the property manager had a prospective tenant ready to sign an aggressive, slightly discounted lease within 24 hours. The new tenant was a corporate relocation himself, needing immediate housing. Friday morning, the movers arrived. I packed my entire life into a moving truck. I took my furniture, my electronics, my clothes, and my dog. I left exactly what belonged to her. Her clothes, her makeup, and a few cheap decorative items she had brought in. I boxed her belongings meticulously, recorded the entire process on video to prove absolutely nothing was damaged, and placed the boxes neatly in the detached garage. By Saturday afternoon, the townhouse was completely professionally cleaned. The property manager executed the lease with the new tenant. He moved his belongings in on Sunday morning. The locks were changed by the management company. My name wasn't even on the new keys. I drove halfway across the country. I arrived in Denver, checked into my new apartment, and blocked her phone number. I blocked her on all social media. I set up a specific email filter, so any emails from her would go directly to a hidden folder that automatically forwarded to my lawyer. Tuesday afternoon rolled around. I was sitting at my new desk in Denver when the forwarded emails started hitting my inbox. Subject: where are you? Message: my key doesn't work. The house is locked. Where are you? 5 minutes later. Subject: answer me now. Message: there's a strange car in the driveway. The blinds are open. I am calling the police. You are dead, according to the incident report the property manager later provided to my lawyer. Here is exactly what happened at the townhouse. She stood on the porch, banging on the door and screaming at the top of her lungs. The new tenant, a heavily built man in his 40s who was just trying to unpack his kitchen, opened the door. She tried to push past him, Get out of my house. Who are you? The new tenant blocked the doorway entirely. I lease this property. Step back before I call the cops. I live here. My boyfriend owns this house. Call the cops, I dare you. So he did. 2 patrol cars arrived. She was hysterical, pointing at the new tenant, demanding he be arrested for breaking and entering. The officers calmly asked the new tenant for identification and proof of residency. He produced a state ID and a newly signed, legally binding lease agreement from the property management company. The officers then asked her for a proof of residency. She had her driver's license, which listed the address. The police explained the situation to her very clearly. Ma'am, the owner of this property has leased it to this gentleman through a management company. Your belongings are in the garage. Because there is a valid lease in place, and you have been absent, this is a civil matter. You cannot enter the premises. If you try to force entry, you will be arrested for trespassing right now. She froze. The realization finally hit her. The house was gone. The safety net was gone. I was gone. The emails escalated from furious to completely unhinged. She demanded I call her. She demanded I transfer $10,000 to her checking account immediately so she could secure a long-term hotel. I did not respond. I just kept working. Then, the absolute entitlement kicked into high gear. Her mother somehow found my work email address. Subject: You are a monster. Message: I cannot believe how you are treating my daughter. You abandoned her. You illegally evicted her. She has a business to run. You will sign the house over to her immediately, or I am hiring the best attorney in the state to destroy you. You owe her for the years she gave you. I just smiled and forwarded it to my lawyer. She quickly realized she was completely locked out of my life. She went to the hotel she had booked in the city to figure out her next steps. She tried to use the 3 credit cards she had fraudulently opened in my name to pay for the room. All 3 cards were declined. The fraud departments had frozen them 3 days prior based on my police report, the FTC affidavit, and the ongoing investigation. Panic must have set in. She had no money of her own. She had quit her retail job the week before her Miami trip. She called her boyfriend. This is where the interconnected twist of the story began to unravel rapidly. Her boyfriend, it turned out, was not a legitimate businessman. He was a professional grifter. The LLC was nothing but a shell company. The $45,000 she had siphoned from my credit lines had been deposited into the LLC's business account. Her boyfriend had set it up so he had sole signatory authority on the primary corporate checking account. When she called him in tears, explaining that she was homeless, that my credit cards were frozen, and that she needed to draw from the LLC funds to get an apartment and a lawyer, he stopped answering. He had already wired the funds out of the LLC account to an offshore account the day they got back from Miami. He blocked her number. He completely disappeared with the money she stole for him. She was entirely alone. She resorted to some incredibly dirty tricks. She went to the local police precinct and attempted to file a grand larceny report against me. She claimed I had stolen $30,000 worth of jewelry from her before leaving. The police took the report, but when they cross-referenced my name in their system, they found the active, heavily documented identity theft and fraud investigation I had already initiated against her. The detective handling my fraud case immediately flagged her larceny claim as highly suspicious retaliation. They checked the garage, saw her meticulously packed boxes, and told her to stop wasting their time. Next, she contacted my former employer's HR department. She claimed I had stolen company laptops and servers to set up a competing business, hoping to get me fired and ruin my career. HR conducted a brief internal audit, found all my return equipment perfectly accounted for, and simply ignored her subsequent calls. Running out of options, she managed to retain a lower-end attorney who worked on contingency. He filed a civil lawsuit against me for illegal eviction, demanding $50,000 in damages and emotional distress. My lawyer called me in Denver. She filed a civil suit. This is actually perfect. It forces her to sit for a deposition under oath. We have the criminal investigation running parallel, but the police are building the case slowly because financial crimes take time. We will use a civil deposition to lock her into her lies and hand the detective a wrapped gift. 3 months later, I flew back to my home state for the deposition. It was held in a stark, glass-walled conference room at my lawyer's firm. I sat at the table. I wore a tailored suit. I felt completely calm. She walked in a few minutes later. She looked terrible. The arrogant sneer from the bar was completely gone. She was pale. Her clothes were uniform, and she looked absolutely exhausted. Her chief attorney sat next to her, looking bored and eager to just get a quick settlement. The deposition began. Her attorney asked me basic questions about the living arrangement, trying to establish that I had unlawfully removed her. My lawyer objected where appropriate, but mostly let me answer truthfully. Yes, she lived there. No, she did not pay rent. Yes, I hired a property manager. Then, it was my lawyer's turn to question her. He started very gently. He asked about her living arrangements. He asked about her business. She answered confidently, falling back into her entitled persona. She claimed she was a partner in my home, that she had equitable interest in the property, and that I had maliciously destroyed her life out of nowhere. My lawyer opened a thick manila folder. You mentioned your business, he said, his tone casual. The LLC, how exactly was that funded? She hesitated for a second. I secured financing. Through credit lines? Yes. My lawyer slid a piece of paper across the long wooden table. It was the IP address log from the credit card applications, obtained via subpoena by the detective during the fraud investigation, which my lawyer had legally requested access to for discovery. This document shows that the application for the $18,000 credit line was submitted from an IP address registered to your personal cell phone. The signature on the digital application is my client's name. Did you sign his name? Her attorney intervened quickly. Objection, relevance. We are here regarding a tenancy dispute and an illegal eviction. It goes directly to character, credibility, and the counterclaim of fraud we filed this morning. My lawyer countered smoothly. He looked directly at her. Did you sign his name? He told me I could. She lied, her voice shaking slightly. Fascinating, my lawyer said. He reached into the folder and pulled out another document. It was a transcript of the text message conversation between her and the boyfriend, printed directly from a backup I made from the synced desktop Mac before I moved. In this text exchange dated 3 days before the cards were opened, you state to your associate, and I quote, "I'm going to apply for the cards tonight while he's asleep. He never checks his credit. By the time he finds out, we'll have the cash and be gone." End quote. She turned chalk white. All the color drained from her face in a matter of seconds. Her attorney stopped looking bored. He sat up completely straight, staring at the transcript, realizing his client had just walked him into a nightmare. My lawyer didn't stop. He was relentless. We also have the banking records for the LLC. You transferred $45,000 from these fraudulent credit lines into an account controlled by your associate, funds that have since vanished. You committed identity theft, wire fraud, and grand larceny. You can't prove that, she snapped, her voice cracking, trying to muster some of that old entitlement. Actually, the local district attorney can, my lawyer said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. Because yesterday afternoon, based on this exact evidence, which we turned over to the authorities, a grand jury indicted you on 3 counts of felony identity theft and 1 count of scheme to defraud. There's an active felony warrant out for your arrest. I imagine the detectives, who I informed of this meeting, will be waiting in the lobby when we conclude here. The silence in the room was absolute. The entitlement evaporated completely, leaving only pure, unadulterated terror. She looked at her attorney. He was actively packing his briefcase. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with a client who had just admitted to federal-level crimes in a civil deposition while facing an active felony warrant. He knew his contingency fee was gone, and he was sitting next to a massive liability. She looked across the table at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was small and broken. "Please, don't do this. I'll pay you back. I'll do anything. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He tricked me. He took the money." I looked at her. I thought about the crowded bar. I thought about her laughing with her friends, telling them I was too scared to leave, that I would fall apart without her, that I was just a stepping stone. "You made your choices," I said evenly. "Now you have to live with them." I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out of the conference room. As my lawyer predicted, 2 plainclothes detectives were waiting in the lobby. They had been trying to track her down for 2 days since she had been bouncing between cheap motels. I walked past them, pushed through the heavy glass doors, and stepped out into the bright afternoon sun. 10 minutes later, I saw them escorting her out of the building in handcuffs. She was sobbing hysterically, struggling against the cuffs, looking back toward the building as if hoping I would come down and stop it. I just got into my rental car and drove to the airport. The legal process took another 8 months to fully resolve. The civil suit she filed for illegal eviction was dismissed with prejudice by the judge the moment her criminal indictment was entered into the record. Her attorney formally withdrew as her counsel the very next day. The criminal trial never happened. Faced with the overwhelming mountain of evidence, the IP logs, the forged documents, the text messages outlining the premeditated fraud, and the financial tracking of the stolen funds, her public defender advised her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony identity theft. The judge was not lenient at all. She was sentenced to 3 years of supervised felony probation. She was ordered to pay full restitution of the $45,000 to the credit card companies. Because of the felony conviction, her employment prospects vanished overnight. She was legally barred from working in finance, retail management, or any position requiring fiduciary trust. I received a final update from my lawyer a year later. She was living in a cramped, miserable studio apartment on the bad side of her hometown. She was working the night shift at a warehouse, and the majority of her wages were being garnished by the state to pay the massive restitution she owed. Her mother had cut her off financially after the legal bills from the initial arrest completely drained her savings. As for me, the credit card companies wiped the fraudulent debt from my record entirely based on the police report and her criminal conviction. My credit score rebounded perfectly. The transfer to Denver was the best career move I ever made. I was promoted to senior analyst within 6 months. I still own the townhouse. The new tenant renewed his lease for another 2 years, providing a steady stream of passive income that goes straight into my retirement accounts. I learned a really harsh lesson about trust, boundaries, and the staggering capacity for entitlement some people possess. But I also learned exactly what I am capable of when pushed to the edge. I didn't fall apart. I didn't break. I rebuilt my life quietly, methodically, and forcefully. If you want more stories about surviving absolute chaos and executing perfect, legally binding revenge, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's the only thing here that's completely free and won't ruin your credit score.